Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of Game Discussion. Today we are going to be looking at something that is now being discussed a lot more frequently than it once was, and with companies like Epic Games defending certain controversial decisions as they believe that they are a necessary bastion of hope to game developers and game companies in general. I am, of course, talking about the topic of game sales, and I shall be looking at a lot of various arguments that I hear to look at the honest question of, is this a good or bad thing? Now, starting off, I'd just like to say that there are two sides to this. Okay, there's not just one side, so don't blind yourself to one side. And both sides do usually have a point, and they have something that you could probably hear them out on. So, before we get caught up in, kind of favoritisms, and I want to just point out myself, even me, before we get caught up in the amazing sales that,
Nice.
game sales can be and the amount of money that it saves on us, let's just try and at least hear what the other side is saying. The main point that I hear a lot against game sales is usually that, games should be, for them, they believe that games should be sold at 60 US dollars. That obviously varies depending on where you are in the world, as most companies feel that's a fair amount considering how much content you are usually, the keyword is usually, getting in a game. Which is, it's a fair point. There are plenty of gamers that don't realize that a lot of time goes into a game, even games that a lot of people may consider quote-unquote bad. A lot of time goes into a game, years of effort and whatnot. And the fact of the matter is, like it or not, our favorite game companies are just that. They're still companies with employees that need to be paid, and a company's main goal is to make money. And like I said, whether we like it or not, even the ones that we do enjoy, that is their main goal. So for them, when they see a $60 game being sold under their desired retail price, because for them, they see that game is $60 and it deserves to be $60. So when it's under their retail, they get quite a bit upset, and I can get why to a degree. But that's really the main counter argument that I hear from these companies and whatnot about why the games are sold at less of a price. We can talk about Steam sales, but it's not just I don't just want to limit it to Steam, because there's a lot of other times where games are sold. I've seen other stores, even GameStop back in the day when I used to go to GameStop, where they'd have certain games in certain parts of the year where the games are just sold at lower price. So I don't just want to limit it to Steam and whatnot. You may see Steam a lot reference because that's the main people that you know, but there's plenty of other companies that sell games a bit. But that's usually the main argument that I hear, and that's really a lot what they seem like they try and base their argument on, and that's all the ground that they can stand on. So when I get onto being for the sales, please do not assume that I have a bias towards it. It just seems as though there's a lot of contributing factors in the for that seem a lot better than just saying, well, it's at it's a $60 game, but then it's sold at lower than our desired retail, and so the companies get less money, blah blah blah. You know what I mean. So please do not assume that I am biased when I say this. So when it comes to being for sales, companies are right in the fact that yes, games being sold at a lower retail price does in fact make less money. However, I feel like companies focus a bit too much on the immediate action of this. Let me explain right now. You see, games at the end of the day do well due to two main things, that being accessibility and exposure. If your game is quite accessible, meaning a lot of people can afford it and whatnot, then even if it's sold at, say, half of the retail price, you are still likely going to be making a lot more money since more people can technically afford it. Second factor being exposure, since your game is being seen, pretty much by free marketing in some ways through Twitch, YouTube and whatnot, and even probably just telling a friend about a game that they may not have heard of before. That increases the likelihood of people giving your game a shot and whatnot. When you combine these two things and you can see how the magic happens, I'm pretty sure that you can understand where I'm going with this. To me, companies also seem to misunderstand that, most games do not make most of their money on the initial retail day and the immediate price. What do I mean by this? Simple. Let's say that you buy a game that's going to be seasonal. So, for example, what would be a good example? Perhaps some MMO, for example. You buy a game that's going to be seasonal. Now, you pay your $60, for the original, just immediate game. Now, over the years that this game has continued to be updated, say it's got 10 seasons. And each of those seasons, was about $20. Now, overall, over the entire year, not year, but life cycle of the game, you ended up spending $260. Now, besides making you feel a little silly if that's happened to you, take again accessibility and exposure, and apply this to a huge number of people, and you can see what I mean with this. You see what I'm saying? Even if that game was sold at $30, $20, you still paid, $230 or $220. The game made literally 7 times its original price. If we take a look back at, say, games like Skyrim, Dark Souls, Fallout, I could argue with you, not argue like as a child, but arguing the fact that you kind of got ripped off in a way right now. Not necessarily because it's a bad game, but hear me out. When it first came out, whether it was in last gen or the gen that you currently have, if you really got it, when it first made the remaster over to this gen, or if it was on last gen, if you paid that original price, if you paid that $60, you kind of got ripped off in the sense that the games, all that I mentioned, did have DLC. So you paid that original $60, and then you got the DLCs, and say you got all of your DLCs, and boom, you probably ended up paying perhaps for 2 games. So maybe you kind of ended up paying around $120, perhaps, depending on how much DLC those games got. But you see, over the course of that game's life cycle, as people like to say the game is quote-unquote dead and whatnot, you see stuff like Dark Souls Trilogy comes out. You get all of the games with all of the DLCs for $80. Compared to spending $60 and then the extra DLCs and whatnot. I've technically bought that game at a far better price than you must have bought it when you originally bought it. We look at Skyrim Special Edition for $50, $60 some places. You get Skyrim plus all of the DLCs for an original video game retail price. And if you've bought that on last gen, you got your $60, then you got your whatever the DLC was. So yeah. And then we got Fallout Game of the Year edition. And this isn't just all the games that I'm mentioning. There's plenty of other games that have done this. So when you think about it, you've pretty much got ripped off in that kind of way. And those, you see, end up making the company money even years down the line. And why? Accessibility, my friends, accessibility. Over the years, it's gotten tons of exposure. YouTube, Twitch, people are telling everyone about it. It's making headlines, articles. It's getting all this exposure. And now it's got accessibility, exposure, boom, boom, boom. The magic happens. Everyone knows about this game. And so you have a very, very, usually a large number of people just biding their time, waiting till they can snag that deal. They get the full course meal. They get their game, they get the DLCs. Then in this case, like with me, like I said, I did get the Dark Souls Trilogy. You literally get all the games for that saga, or whatever, you want to call it. And you get it literally at just slightly over the original retail price. Look at the deal that I pretty much got compared to people who have probably bought Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 2, and Dark Souls 3, and buying all of their DLCs. But I've got it for just $80. You see what I mean? Accessibility. Accessibility. It's all about accessibility and exposure, folks. I'd say it's probably a bit more about accessibility, but I digress. So you see, even down the line, even literal years down the line, a company still continues to profit from it. Years down the line. And it's because it's now at a lower price. And keep in mind that even if it's just, say, sold at $30, and, say, 30 million copies are sold, that's still tons of profit from the game. So, when I look at this argument, these companies are right, and yes, there is no denying that a lower immediate retail price makes less immediate money for the company, but over the years with that level of accessibility and exposure, it really more than makes up for it. So with that being said, that concludes my thoughts on video game sales. How do you guys feel about it? Are you for or against it? Let me know in the comments. This kind of tears people a lot, and they try and like say why you shouldn't be for it and whatnot. But I'm honestly open. I've given you my perspective. I've given all the reasons why I feel the way that I feel. So I'd love to hear yours down in the comments below. As always, rate the video what you think it deserves. Tell me if you would like to see me featured in the comments below. Feel free to check out my amino linked in the comments, as well as my BitChute linked in the About Me page of my channel. And I will see you all next time. Take care, stay safe, and God bless.